welcome to Let's Get Growing. It's Jo here and I'm at Bulwer Forest Garden on location today. So we're in one of the polytunnels, very busy everywhere. So we're on to pack 11 and it's sort of mid-May and you might be able to hear it's raining outside, but it has warmed up a lot. So this week we seem to be having warm sunny spells interspersed with quite heavy showers, so it's actually quite good growing weather because it's warmed up and everything's shooting up like it should be in May. So we're going to start with today's pack. So in today's pack you should have a Thai basil. So I know we're growing some sweet basil plants, but this is a basil that's used in Thai cooking. It's kind of got an aniseedy taste. So it's a seedling that we've grown. So the first thing you need to do with this is to have a little examination and see if it needs to be potted on into a bigger pot. So what we're going to do is just gently tip it, and no, it doesn't yet. I mean, its roots are growing, but it hasn't filled its pot. I can't see like many roots around here, so I'm just going to leave that for a while. Keep an eye on it. And then the other plant you should have is a little dahlia. So these are dwarf dahlias that we've grown from seed this spring in the polytunnels. So here we've got a dahlia that we grew from seed last year in a big pot. And it's been in the polytunnel over winter. Slugs have eaten a bit, but slugs do like them, but that'll be flowering quite soon. So but these dwarf ones should flower in the first year as well, but that's just one we overwintered. So again, what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to have a little examination and see if it's ready. So you can see the roots are growing up here. It would be okay for a little bit longer, but I think what I'm going to do is to put it into the next size pot. So I'm going to pot it on. So I've got a bit of compost in the bottom, and then I'm not going to disturb these roots. I'm going to place it gently in the middle, and I'm going to put the compost around it. And what you'll need to watch out with for the dahlias is slugs and snails, because they love them. You just need to be checking on the bottom of your pots, because they like to sort of go into the little holes in the pots and lay eggs. That'll be where your culprits will be. So put a label back in, and then the final thing you need to pack is a little envelope of spinach beet or perpetual beet. It's got different names. So it's a green that's very similar to spinach, but a lot easier to grow. It's a lot slower to bolt, and it survives into winter. So you should have about 8 seeds in here. So I'm going to put them into a module, though you could put them in pots. But really you don't want to disturb them, so if you're going to put them into pots, I would be sowing the seeds individually into small pots. I'm going to fill my tray up and then just dig a little hole in each one. And then the seeds look a bit like beetroot seeds, a bit smaller. Just going to use my finger and thumb, one seed into each cell, and then put them up, press them down. I'm going to label them and water them with a fine rose. So that's today's pack. So we're just going to look back on some of the things that we started growing last time. So we did some dwarf French beans. So I've got a few decent ones. Something's been eating these, as you can see, and that one's been sort of snipped right across, but I can salvage some of these. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That one I don't think I'll bother with. So the lesson from this is always to sow a little bit more than what you think you actually need, because it doesn't always all grow, and that one doesn't appear to have germinated. So what I'm going to do with these, is I'm going to do what's called growing on. So I'm not going to put them straight out into the ground because, as you can see, they're quite vulnerable to slug and snail attacks. I'm going to grow them on a bit so they get to be sort of more developed plants, so that they'll be less likely to get eaten as soon as I put them out. So I'm going to put them into this size pot, and I'm not going to pull them. I'm going to squeeze them and tip them because I really want to not disturb that root system. And I'm going to put them into the pot, compost around them, press them down, and then a water with a fine rose. So I've got 5 plants out of that. That one's a little bit eaten, but I think it'll be okay. So the next thing that I need to deal with is we sowed some cosmos seeds, and these have done really well. Just sowed them in a little plant pot. So what you could do with these is, again, pricking out into large containers. So I've got some here. These ones were done into individual pots, and they will grow really nicely like this before you move them on into their final place. These ones were done, I know they look bigger, but I think they were done sooner. These ones were done into modules. So what I'm going to do today is do them into these modules, which are a little bit bigger, but I think will be nice for them. So pricking out, same principle that we did with the lettuce and with some of the other plants we've done. With this one I'm just going to tip it, separate them out. There's quite a few here. Prise them apart so I get a nice long root system. And I'm going to make a hole in my compost. I'm handling it with the leaves. And with my other hand I'm putting the compost around it and I'm firming it down. And I just repeat that. They'll soon pick up all these, they grow fast. But again, you need to keep the slugs and snails off them. So, as you can see, I've got 2 trays of cosmos, and I did 3 little pots. And that's from today's pack. Okay, so I'm back at home now, and we're just going to have a little recap on what we've got growing from the previous packs. And there's a lot of stuff. My parsley plants, they're biannual, which means they only last for 2 years, and this is their 2nd year, so they're both going to flower and going to go to seed. So they'd be no good for eating anymore. But what I'm going to do is leave them to go to seed, and the flowers are good for insects, and we can save some seeds off these. So if you want to give seed saving a go, you could leave them. So I'm just going to leave them in a sunny spot in the garden. Peas, doing nice to say there's not many in there, so I've got some pea pods forming. So I just have to keep making sure I'm watering these and feeding them. So I'll probably feed them once a week with my nettle feed. And my potatoes, they're at the top of the pot now. Could get a bit more compost in there, but not too much. But they're doing nice. You see them coming through. The onions, I think I'll feed them. The peas, there's no sign of life from. I've looked underneath, so we'll just be patient and leave them a bit longer. Wild rocket's starting to germinate. Don't need to do anything with that yet. And the basil's sort of, it's trying to have much sun really. It needs a bit of warmth. It's just starting to form its true leaves, so I'm going to leave it a bit longer before I prick them out. Chamomile's doing okay and the summer savoury. And the lasagna pot is the pot that keeps giving. Here are the alliums, so they're the seed heads and the flower heads, and there's quite a lot on there. And what I've done with these is I've just put a cane in and tied it up, just because when it rains they'll flop over, just to keep them upright. And the strawberries are flowering, they probably could do with a feed. And I've tied up the wildflowers because they're quite tall, and when it rains they'll just all flop over. So I've just tied them up as well. The calendulas, the slugs or snails have had a go at them, but they'll be okay. And I've potted on, that's my little Leo sunflower in a bigger pot. My stachys has gone into a bigger pot, but I've cut the top off that because I want it to shoot out. And then the red sunflowers are going for it, so these have gone into a bigger pot, but they're probably ready to go into something else. So I've staked them and tied them up. And what I try to do is to grow things on and get them stronger before I put them out, so they're less vulnerable to slug attack. And finally, poached eggplants flowering nicely. There's going to be a lot of flower heads on there, and that's the California poppy. And there is a little viola, I think it's clinging on in there somewhere. Yeah, it's doing a lot though. So everything's looking good. So that's it for today. So the main things I think are just watching, pricking out, watching out for slugs under the bottom of your pots, and feeding. So happy gardening, and thanks for watching.